They were like, this RFP looked completely different than every other RFP that we've seen. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Can you send me all the other ones?
Hey, Growth Detect, welcome back to the final episode of Season 3. I'm Tyler Sumala, your host of the Growth Detect podcast, and that is Lisa Sauve, CEO, principal, and co-founder of SYNECDOCHE, an interdisciplinary architecture studio based in Detroit, Michigan. And get this, they actually launched the firm while they were still in undergrad over 15 years ago. Today, Lisa is sharing how they won an amazing project in a market where they don't have a portfolio of work and with an RFP process that they're not familiar with. So you will learn how to kindly push back on RFPs, why problem statements matter much more than portfolios, and why your purpose, goals, and instinct should be the North Star of your firm. Before we dive in, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Running a firm is lonely, even when you're crushing it, and that's why I built the studio. It's a private group of growth-minded architecture firm owners who actually help each other win. Proven strategies, real conversations, fast results. If you are serious about growing, then go to growthdetect.com/studio or click the link in the show notes and apply to join us. All right, now let's jump in. All right, well, start off by telling us a little bit about the project that we're going to be talking about today and who the client is.
So we're going to talk about Croswell, which is actually Michigan's oldest opera house, and that they inherited and bought a grocery store a block away to expand their programming, both back-of-house programming for stage and costume design, as well as expanded alternative performance space, all of which started out with an RFP that we were invited for and responded to a little bit differently than they asked.
Well, cool. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this initial RFP. We've had a few guests this year. They all love talking about getting projects through RFPs, so I'm really interested to hear about what you saw in the RFP.
Yeah. The first step of the RFP for us is being invited. So at SYNECDOCHE, we actually don't seek out RFPs. We're not looking at databases or putting ourselves into that sort of competition. The kind of effort required and marketing strategy to go into kind of cold call blind interviews of the RFP isn't our strategy. It's more about on the ground kind of networking and building up those relationships within our community. But this one actually came around from a referral within the organization and said, you should probably invite SYNECDOCHE. And so we got this cold email from the organization itself that said, please see this RFP. We hope that you submit something. And so the RFP, explained the project brief a little bit more. We've got this grocery store, this 20,000 square foot grocery store that we want to adapt, and we have growing storage needs and program needs. We would like to also do a performance pavilion. Please provide an outline for all of your services, architectural services. And that was about the full extent of the RFP. So it wasn't how much do you need for storage? How much do you need for back of house logistics? How much how big is this pavilion addition that you have? What is your timeline? Do you have a budget? None of these things were actually defined in the RFP. And so that was kind of the premise of, oh, this is interesting. This is the type of kind of cultural and community program that we really resonate with. But how do we actually make a case for this? And so that was really the starting point of, okay, everything is different about this. Maybe we can do an RFP. And how would we do it?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's backtrack because there's a few things that you said that I want to make sure we don't pass by. One is that you said you don't usually go after RFPs. That's not like part of your normal business development process. In fact, you tend to focus on, you said, like boots on the ground kind of situations, building up those networks and relationships, which it sounds like, if I understood you correctly, is exactly how you then got invited to this RFP. Yeah, from some kind of relationship where you found yourself into, where someone mentioned you in a conversation.
Exactly.
Which, in my opinion, is a much better strategy and much healthier, and will require much less effort over time in terms of if you want to do RFPs, then build relationships with the people beforehand so that you get invited to an RFP rather than having to do what you're talking about, kind of go and search the database and find an RFP that might look interesting and do it. So this way you already have a little bit of a foot in the door because you were because you were invited and because you were brought up by someone else. So
Yeah. We bring a sponsor at the table, right? And that's like the hardest piece is like, how do you get in the room before you're in the room? In this case, it's like the second round, get to an interview. And it's like somebody at the decision table had already decided to put us on the short list without our knowledge. So it wasn't even like heads up, would you be interested in this? It's like, you're getting invited sort of thing. Which is all, it's about, that long, I think we'll talk about this more too. Like, how do you establish relationships in that long-term trust? And the trust that somebody within the organization was like, this is who we should invite before anybody else got to see what our work was about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So you had that, you were looking at the RFP and you're like, okay, hold on. Relative to the work that we usually do, which, to be fair, isn't usually RFPs, but there is like not enough information in here to give them any sort of an outline or an idea or a list of services that we could help with, because we still don't really know what they need yet. Is that true?
Yes. Well, I think the caveat, I think we knew a little bit of what they needed next. They didn't know what they needed.
Yeah, because you have experience doing this. So it was like, it's the exact type of projects that you do. It's just not usually the process that you go about getting them. Well, let's talk about what the kind of normal process would be to respond to that RFP, and then what you all chose, like how you all chose to approach that.
Yeah. I mean, the deliverables for an RFP, I mean, maybe we even like backtrack, right? Like starting an office before you finish undergrad means that I've never worked in an office. I've worked with licensed architects who then oversaw my work to be able to collect all of my hours, to become licensed, but not within an office. And so I've never actually also seen RFPs be created or templated or any of these things. And so our take on what an RFP is was different, not just from, we're not going to give you what you asked for, but also whatever other goodies were in there, right? So they ask about the team and, your skill set and all of these things. And this has been, we've responded to a handful of RFPs. And similarly, this one, they were like, this RFP looked completely different than every other RFP that we've seen. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Can you send me all the other ones?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to compare. But our response to it was like, hey, here's our value statement, the things that we focus on, who we are as people, who our consultants are, and why we are a collective team, right? And then for each of our projects, we try not to walk through projects in the portfolio of like, here's the outcome per se as like the artifact of architecture, but instead we define the problem statement and we talk about our approach to solving those pain points. And so that's really what we talk about when we share projects within an RFP is this is the problem that our client had, and this is how we all work together to solve the thing. And so from that piece of our RFP portfolio, we said what we see as the problem right now isn't that you need a building, it's that you need the vision of what that building should be. So we need to move back a step towards feasibility and visioning, not forward to designing the building without the definition of those things. And I think another kind of big piece of this is we didn't say like, you did a RFP wrong, right? We weren't judging them for that, but we really kind of came in and tried to set a tone of like, hey, this isn't your wheel. You are all great at putting on performances, but you're not great at starting up development. That's not your wheelhouse. That's ours. Like, let us help coach you through some of these things. It's okay if you didn't get the RFP just right. We're here to help you along the way. And I think that's also a lot of the tone is like, we can see problems from a different angle and then collectively put them together to make those solutions. And so it's just like coaching them. Hey, this is how the RFP should look right now. And so this is what you should be requesting as deliverables.
Yeah. And your submission was more about let's help get this RFP to a point where it's going to be best for you rather than like pitching any services, I guess, along with that.
Yeah. And I think the kind of end result, so RFP, I would say, is probably two parts. You have a typical RFP package with who you are as a team, some relevant portfolio pieces. That's kind of swap things in and out relative to the project. And then it's addressing the specific project with a schedule and a scope and fee, right? And so that second part, we couldn't put together a fee or a schedule of how we were going to do any of this because we didn't really know what it was. And so instead we said, hey, for a project like this, here's our rough kind of fee range and how we structure our fees. So like a really transparent way would be like, maybe you can do some math if you know more stuff that you didn't put in your RFP. So once we get to the point of knowing what the scope is, we'd be happy to put together a fee based on this sort of like rubric of how the fee would be structured. And similarly, a schedule goes through these sequences with this kind of proportion of effort in each stage, but we don't know if we're just renovating a thing. How much are we going to have to go through a full rezoning or not? These are all big questions that once we have answered, we can put together. So we gave the outline. And I think things in like the fee structures, like we like to work lump sum. How we get to that lump sum is we work forward and backwards from how many hours do we think it's going to take and our cost, and what's the value of the project, and what's our contribution to that value to like get to that lump sum. Then we can all put that chunk on a page, right? And then we know what the budget is. And we even define, it's like, we don't want to do a bunch of ad services. So if we put together a lump sum today, we're going to be modifying the contract. So we'd rather just start with a conversation.
What I love about this is that actually I had very little context about exactly what happened in this conversation, in you winning before we jumped on here. But I feel like all of the listeners are going to be like, Tyler, you intentionally told Lisa to say this. You talked about how at the beginning of crafting these RFPs, you usually start off with a problem statement. What was the problem that you were solving for the client? And then here's how you here are the solutions that you provided. And I think that is like the best thing that I've ever heard. That is like music to my ears. That's exactly how I think every single architect should be presenting their past projects, because ultimately the question, I mean, I get this question all of the time. It's like, people, they want to move up market, or they want to move into a different market, or they want to expand markets in different ways. And they're saying, we don't have any portfolio projects to point to that. And I'm saying, well, you don't need the portfolio projects to move up or down or across or lateral or whatever, or expand. All you need to know is the problems that you've solved for those, because that spans across markets, no matter what it is. Like if you can relate the project that you've solved for a different market to the same problem that's going to be solved with this market, then it's fine. It doesn't matter. They don't care. They just want to know that you can get them what they want at the end.
Yeah. I mean, and that's like, so like the next step of this, we were invited to an interview, right? So we were shortlisted to the interview.
Yeah.
And met with some board members and the committee, with staff, and other stakeholders. And like, have you ever designed a performance space before? No.
No, we haven't. No, that hasn't happened. Yeah.
Like, what are we? We're not going to be like, well, kind of, because we've done a bar that had a stage or, whatever. It's like, no, we've never designed a performance space before. But we're not concerned about that because, one, we hire consultant expertise within theater design, sound design, and lighting design for those things. We are just the orchestrator of the vision and all of those consultant skills. That's something that we can do regardless of what the program is. At the same point, we're here advocating for the success of the project right from the get-go and know how to solve that problem. And we've solved similar problems before about backing up, doing feasibility, understanding programming and goals before we move forward with just space allocation and adaptive reuse project.
Yeah. And what's great about that is it's such a challenge in the best way possible to the ego of the architect. Right. You're literally saying, no, I don't know how, I haven't done that before, but I know people that have. And I trust in my ability. It's like rethinking, kind of what the architect is. It is really the nucleus of that project, right? You're kind of like you said, the orchestrator of everything that's happening there. And so as long as you're okay, like as long as the client's okay with you kind of essentially being the filter through which all decisions are made, then it doesn't matter who's actually executing that, again, as long as they get the outcome that they're looking for at the end.
Yeah. And it's like recentering the whole conversation, not on program anymore, but process. right? And problem solving. So it's like, no, I haven't done that program, but I've done this process. I've solved this problem. And so once you recenter it to that skill set and that past experience, I have loads of experience in that, right? So that's why you should hire us. Not because I don't have experience in theater. It's because we do have experience in solving these types of problems.
All right, quick break. Here's the deal. No one tells you how isolating running a firm can feel. You're the owner, you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, and somehow you're still guessing. And that is why I created the studio. It's the place for architecture firm owners who want more. More clients, higher fees, real momentum. Inside, you'll get over 100 growth strategies built for firms like yours. Live workshops, resource libraries, sales systems, AI tools. But the best part really is that it is a tight-knit group of owners who push you, who share wins, and who help you grow together. This isn't just another course. It is a business-changing inner circle. If that sounds like what you've been missing, then just go to growthdetect.com/studio or click the link in the show notes and apply to join us inside. All right, now back to the show. So I want to make sure I'm understanding. So you kind of got invited to the RFP. You put together this submission, you submit it, and then they respond back to you and say that you're shortlisted, and then you have to go in for an interview. Is that how that worked?
Yep.
Okay. What was the response like was there any nuance in their response to your submission before the interview process?
Yeah, the invite to the interview, they said, so I wrote down that it's like October 3rd was the invite. October 31st, we submitted it. November 4th, we got invited to the interview.
Wow.
So
fast turnaround,
1 month from being invited for the RFP to being invited for the interview, less than a week between submitting and this. But from that committee, it was like the committee had met. We've reviewed your submission. By the way, through some of these conversations, we're rethinking some of the program and some of so I was like, okay, right? Like it seemed like some of the anecdotes were maybe they were thinking about this for the last month anyway, but maybe we also got them to have a conversation that wasn't which architect is going to be best for this project, but they're like, wait, what's the best project for us? Sort of thing. So that was the kind of nuance in between the lines in the email to us inviting us to the interview was, by the way, heads up, we're rethinking some of these things. This is what we would like to talk to you about in the interview. So there was kind of that leading, and it was like, all right, this is promising. It's worth assembling the entire team. So we had, our civil, like all of our engineers, our MP, all of that, like come to the interview as well to really show how we also problem solve together and how we pass problems back and forth because we're all going to solve it a little bit differently. So it's like, all right, they're already in a mindset to change the formula of things. So let's get everybody, invest in bringing everybody together for this to have that productive conversation.
Got it. Yeah. So it was like you were already anticipating, you could tell it was a little bit of shaky ground in terms of they were still determining what things needed to happen. So rather than saying, cool, let us think about that and get back to you, it was like, no, we're just going to bring the whole team here with you and we can just figure it out together, like right here, right now. So the interview process turned into a little bit more of a charrette, it sounds like.
Yeah, because then we could have really ask questions. It was almost like a kickoff meeting. It's like, why are we song and dancing when we can just start? In the end, it's like, what is the most productive way, through this meeting? If we win it, great. We've already kicked off the project. If we lose it, at least we've offered up a different mindset to hopefully see a more successful project come out of this, right? And as a second set of eyes on it. So even with our full team there, it's like, oh, have you considered this and this? So if they hire the premium theater design architect who's like, great, here's your 5-star theater, they're going to be like, oh, this other engineer mentioned this. Could we pull that off? Right? Just little kind of back the mind anecdotes. And if we can just give them to the organization to be able to have, I think that's still a win. Have some takeaway. And so, yeah, we just jump right into it. I don't half-ass it. Don't just have the interview for the interview's sake. It's a project.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. Yeah.
I mean, there's great psychology, whether it's intentional or not. It probably wasn't intentional, but it works out well in your favor. There's great like psychological almost biases happening in that conversation, because the more that they're making those decisions with you, and the further you're finding your way kind of like down that decision train, the more bought in they are to doing the work with you, because it's really similar to like getting someone. There's a process that some people do where they're trying to move into another market, and they say, okay, I'm going to put together like a small, like low fee offer first. That's my foot in the door. And then once they've spent money with me at all, they're going to be much more likely to spend money with me again. And this is kind of the same process. It's like you went with them and you said, okay, let's figure out what the problems are. Let's ask some questions. Let's see exactly what it is that you need. Let's come to that together, and then you can decide what you want. But since they've gone through that entire decision-making process with you already, and you've provided the insights that you're talking about, they're going to be much more, I mean, whether they realize it or not, they're just going to be so much more interested in moving forward that project with you, because they've already done so much of the work beforehand with you.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, right? All of these are a two-way street too. So it's like you can look at the RFP and be like, red flag, red flag. Are these clients going to know what they're doing?
Yeah.
And then you're like, just by getting that email about the interview, like, we're reconsidering things. It's like, okay, they're flexible, they're open-minded. And then through the interview process, in that dialogue, it really was, how much can we work together? How is this dynamic? And so it's a way for us all to see if this is a good relationship, that we're going to have a really productive and fun, way that we can really bounce ideas and build off of each other. So at the same way, it's like, is there going to be resistance if we offer these things up and they're like, no, we just want this? Then it might be a point for us to be like, we're going to remove ourselves from, this bid. But at the same time, we're like, oh, they're really easygoing, right? You see that one where it's like, you design it all versus I design it all, sort of thing. It's like $5,000 versus $5.
That's right.
Same thing. It's like, how easy are they going to be to work with? That really plays into the fee. And so it's like, this was a really great way to not offer a fee up front, understand the dynamics of a new client, understand how that relationship is going to work, how much work we have to do on the relationship and the decision making, and how much work we have to do on the building design. It's those soft skills and those soft struggles that I don't think get captured a lot in design fees. But when you have an opportunity like in an interview, you can really kind of suss those out and calibrate appropriately.
Was there a moment in the interview process where it felt like was a little bit of a tipping point? Like you could see, because we're both vibing on both sides, and it was like, hey, maybe this is actually going to, maybe I could see this like working long term. I could see us winning this RFP.
Yeah, there was one board member who got really excited. I mean, there was one, figured out what board member like knew us through another person.
Yeah.
Was like,
yeah,
okay.
Smart move, by the way.
Know
your champions always.
But there was another, and we really talked about, the fiscal responsibility as a board. Don't get too far into, designing a project just to, over budget and have to redo things. What are the operational flows? And afterward, like, he gave me his card. He's like, if you just want to talk about this stuff more, give me a call. I'd love to just kind of work through some of these ideas more generally or on other projects, sort of thing. So it's like those sorts of things were moments that just our approach was resonating, not even around the project itself, but once we stopped talking about the project and we were all just vibing about how we approach life, community development, programming, it was like, all right, we're all just on the same page. This is going to be easy and fun. And so, like, all the logistics aside, I think we were all just like excited to design and work together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I assume it wasn't there in the moment that you found out that you won it. Was it later on?
It was. So November 21st was the interview. December 2nd, we had a signed contract. So it was
pretty fast. So like 2 months altogether from invite to winning the RFP.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what's great about that is that if you are, so straightforward and honest and curious in that process, like you're talking about, and basically just being like human, like, hey, let's help you get this project. You can so often find yourself in a position where you're surrounded by other people that are involved in other things that might also, even if it doesn't work out for you in this moment, they're going to remember you and they might want to move forward again. So hopefully whoever gave you the card, you did end up calling him, and then maybe you have another project coming in down the line too.
Yeah. And I mean, part of it too was, I think the quickness, just thinking maybe like going back, like we got a signed contract only a couple of weeks after, but we went into the interview being like, we don't know what the scope is, right? So it's like being able to write a fee proposal immediately after that interview too, because we use the interview as a way to help work out the scope instead of convince them they didn't know the scope and they needed to hire us to figure it out. Really, we didn't figure out the whole scope. We figured out that they needed a feasibility and visioning, exercise.
Yeah.
And so we just wrote a proposal to do the feasibility study and some test fitting and visioning so that all of that would come together with a clear program and schedule in mind so that we could define, all right, is this going to be expedited? Is this going to be phased? All of those different things, right? So that we could write, or they could submit another RFP, or they could hire us to continue. And I think we were really also upfront with that too. Hey, we're doing a very small scope at the end of the day. That's what the contract was, really small to start. And we were like, and in your best interest, you could do this for an RFP again, or this is a good exercise. And, if the fee still aligns when we write you the full fee proposal, great, we can just keep moving forward. So the promise to, even in that first scope, to be like, we're going to give you a deliverable that will be workable for any architect to do, showed that like we're not trying to hold some cards back to like force you to keep hiring us to like give you the rest of the set, but at the same time we're still at the best interest for you. If you want to go with somebody else, that is totally your prerogative. You're paying for our services, and this is the scope of services that we're offering at this point.
And I think what's great is that there's probably architects that are listening and thinking, well, it'd be better off trying to do, like you're saying, like larger lump sum, like the full project at the beginning. But the issue with that is still you wouldn't know necessarily what you're getting into, and you could massively undervalue what's needed or overcharge what's needed. And then what happens down the line is that just turns out not to be a great relationship. It's one of those projects that you're not excited about having, on the docket and having to move forward with, because there's all these challenges and changes that came up post signature, post contract, that are just really tough to deal with and more outside of your wheelhouse and basically not prepared for. So I think that's like the smart move of doing, well, let's just do what literally the next step. Like we can't do anything else until we do this next step.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, we've done so many of these now where people have been like, we're ready to do this whole thing. I was like, no, you're not. We're
Yeah.
Again, we try to say like,
this is a picture of what I want. Can we just do it?
That you want to do.
Yeah.
Here are the missing pieces and how we're going to fill those in before you can actually move forward with the full scope. And we've done that several times. And sometimes it's like, this isn't the right project, right? You get through feasibility and you're like, this is wrong. You should sell this land. Like, don't sign this lease or whatever else, right? And similarly, those come back later to be like, I trust you because we parked that one aside. Now we can actually move forward when the right opportunity arose, sort of thing too. And so I think that's like a major part of some of these early feasibility study things is really it's like the training with the client maybe of getting in like critical thinking mindset before you get to just like the logistics of permitting. Everything takes so long and the fatigue can be there. And if you have relationship fatigue along with project fatigue, it's not going to survive. And I think one of the best things is to build a strong foundation of the relationship first. And the project, once you get the pieces in place, that'll work out. But people is so much more the front end investment that you need to get right.
Beautifully said. Yes. Well, here we're like 7 or 8 months later now, right? So how is the project going?
Actually, we're like 3 years later.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So no. So It
That's
did
even
go on
funnier.
pause. So we
Yeah.
did the whole feasibility and we're like, this is a big capital campaign.
Uh-huh.
If you actually want to see all of this go through, here's the capital campaign.
Yeah.
They talked to a few kind of larger donors and they were like, yes, maybe we want to see how you're going to clean up, like modify operations and put together some of these plans with what you have right now to understand how that's going to grow and a clearer path between the original Opera House and this new programming. So it kind of went into a quiet state from the architecture side because it just needed to work out the logistics of basically doubling up the footprint in the program of the organization. A few changes within all of that, and we circled back with them and said, all right, we've got the feasibility. In the meantime, actually, Synecdoche established what was our working motto of do good work into a nonprofit. And the nonprofit helps facilitate architecture studios giving tiered pro bono work to organizations to get things off the ground, right? And so we came back and we said, hey, we're already really vibing. We really want to try out this model, which is like 100% pro bono for the first feasibility and development package. And then it tiers up. So by the time we get to CDs, we're covering all of our costs, recuperating some of our losses. But the hardest thing, especially for nonprofit organizations, right, is getting far enough along in the process and how much sunk soft costs go in before you've raised enough money to actually break ground, right? And so we were like, this is the model that we want to work on. How can we put together a development package for you pro bono that is really going to launch the capital campaign? So now we're talking about putting together a marketing package, not an architecture package. And for that to raise the money to then pay us, right? And all of our engineers to move forward. So it's like, how do we sell this thing better forward instead of separately, right? So we were putting together an architecture package for the organization, and then they were putting together their development package for their donors. We're like, we need to actually do this together. And so how do we make the architecture part of the financial pitch to donate and what it does to benefit the organization? And so that is what starts the flywheel.
And I assume you said it was a nonprofit around the do good work model. One, brilliant that like you kind of built that around the ecosystem of the work that you're doing at Synecdoche. But two, I assume that came about just from the very frequent challenges that you kept on seeing over and over again with the types of kind of institutional and community projects that you were doing.
Yeah.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, we think we want this. We can't afford an architect or whatever. It's like, one, you don't know until you ask. We have an ethical responsibility. This is my take. To both expand our practice and our expertise. It should not be a pay to play to be able to get architecture. But yeah, for most of it, so much of the fees and the expense go in before you even break ground. And I think this is a big gap in just our profession overall, how contractors, you see the thing being realized in the world, so it's easier to cut that check. In architecture, it's really hard to see those ideas being realized when they're still just on the page. And especially for nonprofits and things, people want to see a plaque on a wall. They want to be at a shovel ceremony. And so you're like, how do you continue to help carry along together to get to the point that everybody knows this thing is going to happen? Because so much risk is on those early phases. And more clarity comes, the more the project moves forward, right? And I think that's it. Like, it's risk with the muddiness of the early ideas of the project. And if you can take risk to build clarity, there's more certainty that the project moves forward. And that, I think for us, it's like, we're not here just to design on paper. We want to realize work. We want to realize projects because we want to create experiences, not just design day after day, sort of thing.
Every architect knows that pain of however many unbuilt projects they have in their project files.
And
yeah.
so that was like our problem statement. Like, how do we get more realized work? Not how do we get more design work? How do we get more realized work?
Yeah.
And that was a bit of it. And so that's how this project kind of got re-kicked off. And yeah, they have new board members, world-renowned kind of stage designers, right? So it's like now there's a lot more like in-kind expertise. We're having a great time again, but we just have a strategy about how to keep this moving forward this time around.
What would you say is like the biggest takeaway from this experience? Because it's more, it is a little bit of an anomaly, right? So you're probably not going to come across that many RFPs over the course of Synecdoche where you're like, I'm not so sure that that this is where it needs to be yet. But how do you take what you've learned there into the work that you're pursuing today?
I think it's just that straight honesty and clear communication whenever something doesn't feel right. Right? It could be in the middle of a typical commercial, paid project, and you're like, hey, things seem to be going left for some reason over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I think we need to turn around and come back to like our last anchor point and figure out what path we're moving forward. I think that's okay to like even call out yourself, call out your client and be like, you know what? I just don't think things are really aligning right now. Something's going on. We need to reset and put ourselves back on a forward path together. And I think too often the kind of sunk cost fallacy of like keep pushing it forward, like this, if the starting point was this is the RFP and the ask, it's like, I guess that's the starting point. We can only move forward instead of taking a step back. I think that's the big takeaway is the sunk cost fallacy of forcing the wrong thing forward is detrimental to everybody. And it can be successful both short and long term to be like, we got to cut our losses right now, move back a step. That way we can move faster 3 steps forward.
Yeah. Call it out.
Yeah.
Like you said. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. And to your point, like if you continue to push forward, you really run that risk of you might still be collecting the checks, but if it's taking, if that project is taking up, 80% of your frustrations, right? The 80-20 principle there, then it's going to hurt your team. It's going to hurt the morale. It's going to hurt the culture that's happening at the firm. And so it's actually going to cause more internal issues than what that cash that you're collecting is most likely.
Yeah. And it's like, trust your instincts, right? Like the instincts were, this isn't the right fit, or like the program's not there, but there's something cool. There's something good about it. How would we go about it? Instead of being like, this is what's asked of us, we should do that thing and follow the formulas of the industry. We're like, how would we do it? We're just going to do that. Like, don't try to fit into somebody else's mold either. Like, it's okay to just be like, nah, this doesn't feel right. This feels right. This other direction feels right to us. And just go do that. Yeah. And like, what do you have to lose? What we were going to lose a project that we already didn't have, that we didn't know existed other than being invited to it? Shoot. Another project. Yeah.
Well, this is really important because not only, right, did you say you started Synecdoche as undergrads, you and Adam did, and then you have a nonprofit, and then you're a teacher at a school. You've had a lot of experience, and Synecdoche has been around for, when was
15 years?
Yeah, 15 years. Yeah. And fun fact, your partner Adam taught me when I was at Michigan, and now you're teaching at Michigan. So go Blue, by the way. But yeah, so much exposure, and I think it's really important to think that, like, you basically, have 3 jobs. Maybe you have more that you're not mentioning here, but you have at least 3 jobs, right? You own 2 businesses, and you're saying you just got to do it. Like you have to do it. You have to say it, and you have to call it out when it happens, because if you don't, it's gonna cause problems later on down the road for you.
Oh yeah. Well, and doing it how it works for you, like it's gonna take you twice as long at least, right? Like to do it the way, because you're like, this is how everyone else does it. And you're like, you're not gonna have fun, so you're gonna burn out. Like that's not why any of us started and joined architecture, right? So it's like, do what meets your purpose and goals. And for us, sometimes it's having ADHD and having a dozen jobs. I don't know. But it's also being like, this is how this project will be fun. So that's how we're going to go about it. And if it works out, we're going to have a great time designing it. If they wanted something else, we're not going to try to fit into that, because we're going to be miserable masking ourselves to look like a bunch of architects that we're not. And so like your authentic self is going to be the most energizing one too.
Great takeaway. Do what serves your purpose and goals. Lisa, thank you so much for coming in, for sharing more about this story about pushing back a little bit against the RFP. And I'm so glad to hear that here it is 3 years down the road. The relationship's still growing strong and the project is still moving forward. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Growth Detect, thanks so much for tuning in. If you are enjoying the show, then please share it with a friend and leave a review so other amazing architects can find us. And if you are a growth-minded architecture firm owner that wants to surround yourself with others on the same journey, then apply to join us inside the studio. Just go to growthtech.com/studio or click the link in the show notes. I'll see you next time, friends.